Do you want to live more sustainably but aren't sure where to start or how it fits in with your everyday living? The ReNewy Living Podcast simplifies sustainability so you can feel confident to take small, meaningful actions that fit into your lifestyle. Based on the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people in Newcastle, Australia, you'll learn how to live lighter on our planet through practical ideas, stories from like-minded people, and examples of businesses doing great things. With an open heart and mind, join me, Marty Lee, as we explore how to consume less, build stronger community connections, and thrive in your neighbourhood, wherever you call home. Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Hello, my name's Marty Lee, and welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Newcastle, like much of Australia's coastline, is known for its golden sand beaches and beautiful ocean swimming. However, once you're at the beach, you see pieces of rubbish amongst the grains of sand and seaweed. You can't unsee the problem that you know threatens wildlife and mars the beauty of your beach. In this episode, I'm speaking with Marina DeBris, a Lake Macquarie artist who creates visual story installations to highlight the rubbish problems on our beaches. Over the last 2 decades or so, her solo rubbish collecting efforts have become a valuable small-scale commentary about our society and culture. And there's the minute, non-glitter sparkle of hope that a change in rubbish responsibility could actually be possible. G'day, Marina.
Hi, Marty.
Thank you for having me in your studio at your house. It's a real pleasure to be here. And let's start with what it looks like.
Well, as you see, this is what it looks like, which is boxes and boxes and boxes of rubbish that I've collected over the years off beaches locally and in Sydney, which is where, I actually started doing this work in Los Angeles, but then I moved back to the eastern suburbs, and that's where most of this is from. However, I do, of course, go on our local beaches here and find rubbish, every beach virtually. So yeah, that's the surroundings. And I also have a lot of street finds in my studio. Virtually every apparatus used to house the items is from the street. So that's another issue. I've got, as you saw, costumes, just dress-up costumes.
There's a whole rack or two of costumes. Yeah, just you said you found from the street. Yeah. You know, you've got the mannequins, everything in box. The shelving, you even said the shelving was at the street.
Yes.
Just so you could organise all this waste. And what I really noticed when I walked in, everything is clearly labelled. So whatever you found, you've grouped it.
Yes. And sometimes I'll find something and I'll think, oh, wait, I don't have a place for this. So I'll have to either throw it away, as we know, or my head gets a little confused when I have too many out-of-place objects that I don't have a home for. I really like order. Otherwise, because my life, it's so just finding rubbish in so many places it really does a number on my head. It's not an easy, as you know, it's a very sad process in a way. Sometimes it can be very exciting. I have found $50 note, for instance,
that is
in a
cool.
Bottle.
In a bottle?
A message in a bottle. So I have to say there's a bit of excitement there. And I do find things sometimes and I go, oh, this is such a cool find. I mean, for instance, all these frames, I have framed photographs in this room. All the frames are really ornate, kitschy, but really just amazing. And they're all from the street. So sometimes the finds are actually like, wow, this is pretty cool. Or these Alessi chairs that I found that I told you about. They're expensive items. And
so they're sort of clear plastic bar stools The Alessi, or what was the other brand that you said they were?
It's Stark. It's Philippe Stark, it's Cartel,
That's it.
Not Alessi. Alessi's another thing I have found on the street.
Other Alessi things on the street. Yeah. Because finding rubbish at the beach is a very messy thing to do. There's the fines, as you said, with the $50 note, but otherwise it's mess. You're bringing home mess. When you bring it home, what happens to the mess? Do you wash it?
I never wash anything. It's a very important part of my practice because the reason I do this is to show the truth of what we are creating and wasting and using to begin with. And I don't want it to look beautiful. I mean, in a sense, what I make, people can say it looks beautiful. But when they get closer and they inspect it, they realize what it is. And it's still got whatever, some of it does smell, I have to admit. It's been in the ocean, but it's no worse than what we're swimming in. So, I don't use gloves or anything like that. I don't wash anything, like I said. I really rarely even alter it. I leave it in the form it's originally in.
The frames that you were talking about with the gold frames are all photographs of your artwork. And it's like what you were just saying, that for some people that can look really beautiful because what you've done is created this beautiful art form, but it is all from waste. There's one with the model is wearing 3 washing baskets as the skirt, all found in what street?
Those are the washing baskets themselves, are a regular street find, but you'll see what's coming out of the washing outfits is underwear or knickers and socks and bras that I've all found all of them on the beach. So, which is sadly a very common find. So yeah, and she's called Dirty Laundry. So it's kind of showing our dirty laundry. That's the pun around that. But yeah, and the madam of the house, she's called Do I Make Myself Clear? And it's all clear containers, takeaway containers. And all those are as well found on the beach.
Yeah, during COVID times, which is like from March 2020 onwards for at least 2 years or so with various lockdowns and requirements we had to do. What did you discover on the beaches then?
There were so many face masks. I can't even tell you. And those are super dangerous to marine animals because they get wrapped around, the elastic. Aside from in general, they're so full of horrible plastics and chemicals and toxins. And so a lot of face masks. That was the main thing. I did do a piece for that called Pandemania, which was all made of face masks I found on the beach. It was something like 900. And that wasn't even all of them. As you can see, I still have a huge
You still
box.
have a big box.
And I still find them. In fact, I think it was yesterday or the day before I found a face mask on the beach. So they're still sadly in use. That was the big thing. Occasionally the COVID tests. So you can imagine, medical waste is a whole nother issue. It is more necessary. And that killed me the whole time of COVID because I was really challenged to be able to reuse certain things. Like certainly I reused this face mask. I never washed it. It was reusable. In fact, I had one face mask that I found on the street and it was so cute. So I did wash it and I used that. One day on Coogee Beach, I found there were just like bags of face masks, unused face masks all over the beach and single-use takeaway containers packaged up, unused. And I thought, this is bizarre. And it was from do you remember when the container went overboard? That a lot of them ended up on my beach. So I collected as much as I could. And I actually called a friend at the Sydney Morning Herald and they came down and photographed it. Yeah, so that was an anomaly. But the story behind that is also really interesting because I read about it. And the reason these shipping containers go overboard is because they pack them with more and more stuff that they can handle. And, it's just like a catch-20. It's not a catch-22. It's just stupidity, honestly, or greed. Let's call it greed. We want things faster and in more quantities and cheaper. And in the process, we're actually destroying our Earth, really. That's what it comes down to.
I remember that container ship overload as well because it was also on the Central Coast.
Oh.
Lots of things. And I was thinking of creating an art piece called Wedged because everything, like I found all those face masks and all different sorts of things, all wedged. There is no way I could have got them out of any of the rocks.
Oh, my gosh.
At all because I didn't take my pliers and my scissors with me when I went for my walk that day.
I didn't realise that. Wow.
No, it was fascinating. What's your inspiration for your art pieces? So is it you find a piece of rubbish and you think that might be the start of your next piece, or do you have a different idea in mind and then use what you've got?
Mainly, I base each piece on what I find most often. Almost all of my pieces are from rubbish that I find regularly, like, fishing gear, for instance. So I've made a couple of pieces from all the fishing gear, or some fishing gear. This piece here was all stuffed animals. It's called Plush Toys. So generally speaking, coffee cup lids or coffee cups, things that I find most prevalently are what I will create a piece around that. It's okay to use one-off pieces of rubbish that are not common, but that's never the focal point because I want people to look at it and go, oh, yeah, I use those, or, I guess I shouldn't. I want it to be something that's very often found.
I love the way that you have a take on naming things really creatively, like there's a bit of a play on words. Even your name is a play on words because that's not your real name, but that's the name that you
know.
That's the name that you go by. And I've also heard you say that you can also be called Debris Downer, which again, it's another play on words. One of the installations or sculptures that you have is called the Inconvenience Store. Can you describe what the concept of that is all about?
Yeah, it's a takeoff on a convenience store because most of the items I do find on the beach are from convenience stores. They're very cheap throwaway items. And so everything in the stores I have found on the beach, of course, but it's all been repackaged in packaging materials that I've found on the street. So even a lot of the stands are from the street. Obviously, it's a spoof of our society of convenience and our addiction to it as well, and how cheap everything is. If it stops working, you just go and buy a new one instead of repairing or reusing something else. I first showed that at the Sculpture by the Sea in Bondi, and it actually won the People's Choice. It won 3 awards, in fact. It won the People's Choice Award, which to me said a lot about that this is actually working, like people understood where everything came from. It started really great conversations between parents and kids. I would go in and I would actually man the store or woman the store. So I would hear people's comments, and it was very positive as far as I knew that piece was reaching everyone, and it was easy to understand. I actually had people say that I really like this piece because I can understand it. It's not esoteric, it's not subtle at all, and it's funny.
It is very funny. So I know that you've got it displayed at the Lake Macquarie Waste Art exhibition. You've also got it at the Full Circle Collective.
Correct.
In Newcastle.
Yes, it will be at the Full Circle. And you can buy items there. I have.
Really?
Yes. A great gag gift, novelty item. Yeah.
When it was exhibited at the Sculpture by the Sea and you got that opportunity to hear what people were saying, what kind of things were they saying? And did you ever let on that you were the artist?
I did after, if I started engaging in conversations with people, which happened quite often, yes, I would tell them I was the artist. But generally, no. I had, it was mostly people talking to whoever they were with and just pointing things out and talking about where it came from. And if it was kids, they would explain where it came from. The one misconception, which I have yet to figure out how to convey, is that many people think that the rubbish is just chucked on the beach or chucked in the ocean intentionally. That's so far from the truth. And that is a really hard thing to get people to understand, that it can come from any one of us. It can come from me. You know, you put something in the rubbish bin, in the recycle bin, it can get blown away from the wind, from the rain. When the trucks come to empty it, things drop on the street. They don't pick those up. Plus, everything, the ocean is downhill from everywhere, is the saying. So it will go through the storm drain into the ocean. That's where it ends up. That's the biggest, I guess, misconception, is that people think litter is intentional. And I guess the word litter, I don't know, litter means it's intentional. Things blow away. It's just like in a multitude of ways. So that is when I engage in conversation. That's the main thing. I want people to realize that it can be from any one of us, even if we think we're doing the quote unquote right thing. It is about not using these items to begin with if we don't have to use them.
It is extraordinary when you go for a walk on the beach and you see what is on the beach, whether it's on the shoreline or on the upper area at the start of the sand. Because I've done a bit of rubbish collecting myself. I find it really important because, you know, rubbish begets rubbish, or litter begets litter, and it just makes it worse. And so I like to have a clean, healthy environment when I'm there. So the rubbish that I find, and I'd love you to comment on this as well, but the rubbish I find down near the actual waterline is very different to the rubbish that happens along the beach or in the upper parts of the beach. What have you discovered?
Yeah, that's probably true, because most of the rubbish close to the water has washed up, like physically washed up. So it's been in the ocean for some time. It's been in the sun, and which makes my work actually harder, because those are the materials I work with, and they're generally quite brittle, and I have to repair things all the time because they break up, we should say. As they break up into smaller pieces. This is another thing people don't understand. When plastic, for instance, is in the ocean, it breaks up into smaller pieces, microplastics, and that's where the marine animals ingest it. It also absorbs more toxins while it's out there, so it becomes even more toxic. So what you're talking about closer to the sand is probably blown in, or someone's dropped it. It's more virgin, as it were. But once it hits the ocean, all bets are off. It's dangerous. It's dangerous on land too. It's dangerous everywhere. It's dangerous in the landfill. It emits methane in landfill. So there's no place for single-use items anywhere, and if you can avoid them.
When you go beach collecting, or you're looking for resources that you need to use for your installations, what are the most common finds?
Well, by far, fishing gear is the number one find, and obviously the most dangerous. I find hooks. Every day I'm at Blacksmith's Beach, almost every day I'll pick up many hooks, fishing line that's been cut off, fishing lights. And every fishing person I've talked to, it's not mine, that's their automatic answer. And I say, well, even if it's not yours, why can't you pick it up? Why is it my job to pick it up? And of course, there's no answer for that. Yeah, fishing gear number one, cigarette butts, same place as the fishing gear. Interesting. Well, cigarette butts are everywhere, though. That is the number one item, I think, on universally on all beaches. Microplastics is huge, obviously, because that's what the bigger pieces have broken up into microplastics. And that's very problematic in our local beaches and very hard to clean up, almost virtually impossible, actually. And here, my local beach here, Redhead, there are cotton swabs, or I don't know if they're cotton swabs. I mean, cotton swabs, and some are probably like lolly sticks, but I think more so cotton swabs. And I assume that it's from people flushing them down the toilet. Don't ever flush anything down the toilet, but you know what? The number 2 find is number 2.
Oh, no, I know what you mean. I have seen
Dog poo.
Yes, I have seen this on your Instagram post.
Unbelievable.
That it is, we have got all the facilities available. People know what their responsibility are if they're a dog owner, and there's leash-free dogs. So in Redhead, there's the swimming part, and then it's clearly signposted to say this is the dog park. And you have found too much dog poo.
Unbelievable. The first, just on the walking path to the beach, the first 2 weeks I lived here, I counted 300 piles of dog poo. And I did start creating a little activist guerrilla art, I guess. It was very funny too, because I got a kick out of it. I thought it was quite amusing, just to draw attention to it, that this is not okay. I did it phantomly. I was talking to someone and saying, oh, did you see that post on our neighborhood Facebook page? And I'm like, no. And someone had posted about what I was doing. No, it wasn't me. And said, you know, it started this huge discussion, which was great. I thought, fantastic. I mean, a lot of people were criticizing my action and saying, oh, I'm worse than the person who's left the dog poop. Yeah, a lot of people said that, but more people, it started this amazing conversation. And I thought that in itself is worth it. And then somebody started picking it up as well, started that. And then I've been talking to the council, of course, because that's the number one go-to. You know, they're the only ones that can really do anything about it. And I did get some movement from them. They listened. I had quite a few suggestions for them, and they did do some of them. That was good. I think the main thing is that a lot of people think that it's natural, quote unquote, dog poo if it's out of a bag, and it's not at all. It's so full of toxins. Do we want this to be our beautiful sight? And do you want it on your shoes, especially? I can't tell you how many times I've stepped in it. So, yeah, it's not okay. It's not acceptable. We need to preserve this beauty.
It's one of those age-old questions of, why don't people do something about it? Why don't people pick up their dog poo? I mean, it's not something that we can answer, but it gobsmacks me as well.
Yeah.
Responsibility, and particularly something like that. There's facilities, receptacles available. There's, the green waste bags, or bags that are available to poop your scoop. Scoop your poop. Scoop your poop, not poop your scoop. Scoop your poop into bags, yet people still don't do it. So it is like that psychology of behaviour.
Yeah, but just being a debris downer here, dog poop is not good in any respect, even once it goes in the red bin, for instance. It does not go in the green bin, another point, because even though the commercial composts are very hot, it still contains toxins that cannot break down. So it goes in the red bin, goes to landfill, emits methane. Not good. The amount of dogs that are being bred off the charts, since COVID, there's no way that this is sustainable, quote unquote. And I have to say, I love the Fogo. I love it. I think
so that's the Food
brilliant.
Organics, Garden Organics, where in the Lake Macquarie Council area, you can put your garden green waste in there as well as your food green waste, especially if you're not a composter person. So, so we've got the Fogo bin.
Yeah, but the bags, I mean, they take resources. They give them out like candy. I've got 3 rolls that have been left at my doorstep, and I reuse, of course, I never put them in the green bin because I just reuse them until they're useless, which is pretty quickly because they're not very strong. They're not plastic, of course. That's the downside. But it takes resources to make those bags. I have a little rescue dog, but I had 2 dogs as well when I was living in LA. And this is even before I became Marina DeBris. I was on a mission to figure out the best way to get rid of dog poo. So I went through every method you can imagine. I dug a hole, but because I had 2 large dogs, the hole filled up so quickly. And you put like bokashi in it to break it down, but it didn't work. The worst was I bought this composting machine. It was quite expensive. And this is way back. This is like close to 20 years ago. This machine that turned dog waste specifically into compost. And when it worked, it was unbelievable. It was like gold. You wouldn't put it on your edibles, but you could put it in your garden. But it constantly broke down, and I would have to clean it out, the poop from all the little crevices. And one day I just said, okay, your face says it all.
My face, I am just doing a face of grossness for that one.
Yeah. Well, I was too. And I was there with my little whatever, cleaning the poop out. And I thought, nah, you've gone too far. This is not, you're trying your best, but nah. That did not work either. And then I did start flushing it down the toilet. And that's what I do with my dog now. I find all the poop bags on the beach or the street, unused ones only, of course. So I never bring virgin ones. And I'll reuse it as much as I can. I started numbering this bag to see how many uses I could get out of it. Over 100 uses.
And that's amazing considering they are compostable.
Well, that's not those ones.
Oh, this is just the normal plastic bags.
Normal plastic bag.
Okay, yeah.
I used it over 100 times. Yeah, and then it finally got to a stage where I thought, okay, this is done. And that was a tribute to Andy Marks, who did a project with Iggy's Bread, which is I think mostly Sydney-based bread company, and they're just the most divine bread on earth if you ever go there. And he would bring his own a paper bag or several, and he would reuse them and mark them as much as he could. And he used them, I don't remember how many times, but it was like the same paper bag. And then he had an exhibit of that in the Iggy's bread store. And I thought, that was an inspiration behind that. I just had to add that. And he's also worked on War on Waste, which is an amazing, if we talk about that, I thought was an amazing series that did a lot.
It really helped Australians open their eyes to the complexity and the volume of waste that we have and we generate. And Australia, in terms of population, is very small compared to other countries in the world. So it's really hard to imagine, or is it easier to imagine how much waste goes in other countries as well? Which sort of brings me to the point. I mean, what do you call waste? Is waste sanitised terminology, or do you call it rubbish or litter or trash? Does it make a difference to how we name it?
Debris.
Or debris. That's exactly right, or debris.
Yeah, I don't know. Because rubbish isn't an American term particularly, I think we say garbage more, I suppose. And yeah, I have no answer to that. To me, it's pretty much all.
But in one way, you're using waste as a resource to do your work.
Yeah, but it's not my focal point. Is not just simply to reuse it. It's to make a statement, to get people to change their habits. I mean, that's the goal.
How do you know that that's worked?
I don't, and I will never think that it has. But I'm going to keep trying, and I don't know. It's sort of enveloped me, and it's a necessity. I wish I could stop doing it, but I can't. It's just ingrained in me. And whether it's working, debatable. There's no way to weigh that or have data on that. I know people have said things to me about it changing their habits and things like that. So I'm sure with some people it has, but I'm not going to say on a grand scale I'm making that big a difference. I'm just
making a statement. This is what it is. This is what you're saying. This is what it is. I'm highlighting it to you here and now. And maybe the data collection, is different in terms of it's a conversation, like you were saying before about the dog poo. It's conversations that are happening for people to see that this is actually a problem. But it's whether people are taking that next little step or that next big step. What are people going to do to help solve that problem?
The $1 billion question.
It is an absolutely $1 billion, $1 trillion question. It's very difficult for everyone to answer that question.
If someone knew the answer, it wouldn't be a problem, I'm sure. But, it's hard for anyone to make changes.
I've done a little bit of research about rubbish and litter in Australia, or is it New South Wales over time? And rubbish is not a new thing. It's just increased exponentially. So in 1968, the first Keep Australia Beautiful campaign was started. I don't necessarily remember that campaign because I was not even born yet, but I definitely do remember the Do the Right Thing campaign, which came out in 1979 and continued to the mid-80s. And then they found that, by the late 80s, everyone was getting a little bit complacent. So there's been ongoing marketing since 1968 to say, we've got lots of rubbish, we need to do something about it. And what are we now? We're now 2025 and we're still trying to find the right solution. So the New South Wales litter prevention strategy has a number of, solutions that the government is going to employ from a government perspective. Things like source control, which really means reducing or eliminating, rubbish in the first place. So that's where the government is targeting the use of, or stopping the use of single-use plastics. And then there's also another government solution of the circular economy of, the return and earn. So you can take recyclables back to the return and earn. And one of the other ones is about product stewardship. Now, I know that sometimes in the past when you found rubbish, that you've taken that rubbish back to the place that it was purchased. How did that go?
I started this when I moved from Bondi Beach to Venice Beach, California, and I instantly noticed how much rubbish was washing up on the beaches, and I thought, what, have I been living under a rock? Or I can't imagine that, this has transpired since I've been away. I would collect cups from 7-Eleven and I would stack them. And my instant thought was, I'll just take them back to my local 7-Eleven and that'll solve the problem. So I did bring them in and I demanded to speak to the manager or whatever. And they just looked at me like I was a complete nutcase. Like, what do you expect us to do about it? And in a sense, they're right. They're part of the problem. It's the manufacturer. The problem is the distributor. The problem is the consumer. Let's not leave the consumer out. Problem is government. So it's all those sectors that along the food chain, dare I say. Yeah, so I only did that once because it was kind of useless. But I'll do the similar thing where, for instance, if there's wrapping, packaging from a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, I didn't say it. There's always rubbish outside of those stores. I will pick it up and chuck it back in the store. It's their problem. They need to take care of it. So there's a thing I think it was started by a group I worked with in Los Angeles called Five Gyres. And they, a long time ago now, started something which I guess is similar to the stewardship program. It's called producer responsibility, where if you produce that single-use item, you've got to figure out how to get it back and how to reuse it, put it back into the economy, and not create more virgin. And the onus is on them. And I think, that's a brilliant, it's part of the circular economy system. And I think, that's one thing that will make a huge difference.
That will make a big difference. And I've read that there is this implied cooperation in the community to keep the place clean. So it's not just the responsibility of the government and it's not just the responsibility of businesses. It's all of our responsibilities. And that has a term that I've called social compact.
I mean, I think that's important. How do you instill that? That's the big question.
Again, we're coming out with the big question.
That's super important. I went to, when I first began this, I went with Five Gyres to a nerdle conference. Talk about a nerd.
What is a nerdle conference?
So nerdles are pre-production plastic pellets. So each item of plastic starts from a nerdle. It's like a little ball. Sometimes I find them on the beach as well. I went to a conference, this was in Japan years ago, and I remember thinking, I see almost no rubbish on the street, nothing. And so I asked the question, which was almost all Japanese audience. I said, well, and they do have an incredible amount of plastic packaging in the markets and everything, an amazing amount. And I said, how is it there's no rubbish on the streets? There were two answers. One was that there was a big bomb exploding in waste bins years ago. So they took away all the waste bins. So that was part of it, is that you take your rubbish, you take it home with you, which is a super simple concept anyway, and it's how it should be. But the second thing somebody noted was that Japan has a very high social conception of shame. And it's you wouldn't shame your grandmother, you wouldn't shame your neighborhood by littering. And at the same token, you would pick something up if you saw it. So I thought that was super interesting because we don't have that in any Western culture that I know of. I mean, America certainly doesn't have that. It's the same, the reaction from the fishermen or women, which is, it's not mine. Why should I pick it up? Well, that in itself, how do you change that perception of everyone? It's all of our responsibilities. I mean, that is the hardest thing to turn around in people's consciousness, I think.
It's great how you've just given that example of between Japan and here, because when we live in Australia all the time, we just take that as expected, and you might not think that we actually have a culture around rubbish, but it shows that we really do.
I think it's our perception of freedom. It's the same with the dog poop, It's my dog can be off leash. My dog can poop wherever they want. It's like an attitude of our perceived freedoms in this country. Maybe so, but you're not free to kill someone. You're not free to rape someone. You're not free to litter. You're not free to leave dog poop. You're really not. But it's become so acceptable, I guess, in mainstream, that's the hard thing to turn around.
It's still rules that we have to follow as a society to help our society stay positive to work. I mean, we're really lucky that we have got a good sanitation system here.
Yeah, exactly.
And waterway system as well. And to keep that protected as much as we can is all of our responsibility to do something about it. Do you think there's been a difference in the types of rubbish that you've picked up between the 3 different beaches across the world, so between Venice Beach, Eastern Suburbs and Lake Macquarie? Not to say that we need to have a waste off or a rubbish off or anything like that of who's got the worst rubbish.
I think per capita we all win. Yeah, look, no, that's the weird thing. It's so ubiquitous. It's the exact same things for the most part. It's single-use items, it's fishing gear, it's cigarette butts. That's totally microplastic. That's, everywhere, every beach. It doesn't matter how remote that beach is. That's what you're going to find. I mean, there are very small variations. Like when I was in Los Angeles, I used to constantly find Tiparillo. They're the tips for smoking cigars. And I really did not, because I never saw anyone smoking cigars, but I think it might have been a drug thing. I'm not sure. And I used to find drug bottles all the time. So very small differences, but
plastic overall, which is something that the data collection has shown that plastic is by far the largest share of the total litter. So the New South Wales Litter Prevention Strategy does highlight that in density, plastic is 79% worth of litter, and also in volume it's 70%. So it's a really big thing. What can we all do to take action to help solve this?
The obvious things are just reuse whatever you can. There's so many resources. Do not take any single-use item you don't need. Work with your local council, work with the government, work with the manufacturers. Always make a noise. If you see something, say something, as they say. The Snap Solve is a great resource if you don't know about it. It's an app where if you see something like a leaking faucet somewhere or, a shower or something out in public, anyone who's dumped rubbish, you can take a picture of it and you put it on this app and it sends it in to your whatever council you're in, and they respond. They will respond in some way, shape, or form. I find that a brilliant app, Snap Solve. What else? I mean, just pick it up. You can pick it up. As I say, take 3 for the sea. I take like 30 for the sea. Those are the obvious things. Get involved with local cleanup groups. But cleaning up is so far from the answer. It's just like a Band-Aid on the problem. If you go to a restaurant or something and you have your own container, like during COVID, I found this was unbelievably difficult to bring your own container, a coffee cup. Nobody would go near it. But now you can. But if an establishment won't let you use that, don't go there again. Simple as that.
I've done that in relation to coffee cups, and there are times that I've needed to have a takeaway coffee and I've got my reusable cup, and I asked them if they could give me a discount for bringing my own cup, because it's saving them money. They don't have to pay for any kind of coffee cups. And she said, no, we don't. I went, okay, thank you. And she gave me the weirdest look when I walked away, but for me it was just, that was my personal action.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marina, for your time today. It's been really insightful to hear your passion about encouraging everybody to reduce the amount of waste that they produce and things that they purchase, for your awareness about the issues of dog poo, your activism, your veganism, everything else, everything that you do has a purpose for you. And hopefully this is an inspiration for everyone else. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the ReNewy Living Podcast. I hope you're feeling more confident about taking a localised and actionable approach to living sustainably. If this episode has inspired you to take simple action, please follow the ReNewy Living podcast so you can catch every episode. We'd love it if you could share this episode with your friends. It's a great way to spread the word and help more people join the conversation about living sustainably. You can even send me an email with the episode that really made it for you. Hearing your positive actions for change helps me understand how these stories work within our shared communities. Head over to my website, renewyliving.com.au, for the show notes and blog posts from this episode. I look forward to sharing more stories from the people of Newcastle as we delve into our community's diverse social and environmental practices for positive planetary change from a localised perspective.